equipment.
On our backs, glassing these deer. It's raining. We're just soaked.
Bachman's got a bright yellow, like, golf bag looking thing over his camera, just, like, waving it in the wind.
Look like Pennywise
like,
with a red balloon.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, guys.
I was like, bro, can you get that a little lower?
I've got some
it's like
alfalfa for you.
up on a tripod, like.
Why don't you come down here? I've got some alfalfa.
Wow.
Wow.
So aggressive.
And we're back.
Yes, we are.
Well,
We're North Dakota camper.
We're not back. We're in North Dakota.
No headphones, no software.
Yeah.
Just us in the camper.
Roughing it.
Yeah.
On
Not
the
so
podcast
much, right?
setting. Roughing on the podcast setting.
Yeah, we just turn off the air conditioning so we could shoot this.
People are like, oh man, these guys are like backcountry. Yeah, we're sitting in a trailer with AC.
We have been hunting hard, though.
We have, man. It's today was the last day of North Dakota for us, and we left on the 30th to start driving to South Dakota, and today is the 5th? 7th?
Pretty close. Well, it opened on the 3rd.
Yeah, that's true.
So what did we hunt for? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 5 days in North Dakota.
That's crazy. And we hunted hard. I was talking to my wife earlier, and the thing that everybody will find out is we're coming home empty-handed besides the sheds on the table. But we put almost, in the last 7 days, we put almost 60 miles on.
Really? Have you looked? That's impressive.
Almost 60.
And those are tough miles. Those are a lot of up and down. These are steep drainages out here. We're just north of, like, this is Badlands country here where we're
Badlands
staying.
are out the window.
Dude, what a weird deal. So, like, we started in South Dakota this year, and, like, hopes were high, but we didn't know really what to expect because we're going with a lease and a few just leads of landowners that were like, yeah, maybe this year, definitely almost next year.
And we got our lease through Base Camp Leasing. I mean, that was the one thing that we, we couldn't hunt South Dakota as non-residents during September. You have to wait till October unless you hunt on private land. Yep. So the only option was outfitter.
But it's an over-the-counter tag, so if you can get permission, you're
outfitter
good. You
permission
can go every year.
Or lease. So we leased just so that we were like, cool, let's buy our tags and let's get out there. And we said, it was a cool place. It was 1,200 acres. Set up the trailer. We were literally center of the property. In fact, our scouting station was the roof of the camper.
Yep.
And we just every morning would climb up and be able to see pretty much the whole property except for the back 600.
Yep.
And I think it was the story of the trip was that even there, like, it's just massive drought.
Yeah.
Like, everything is dead.
Hard to know what it would look like on a regular year, because even once we got here, it was like wastelandish, almost just desolate.
Yep.
Who knows, on a regular year, that area in South Dakota might just be lush and beautiful. There might not be cows and everything that there was this year, and but it certainly was desolate. I mean, it was just dry and flat and cows.
And we did have a really nice creek drainage at drive. And a lot of the people, I guess, when we started talking about neighboring landowners, a lot of the people immediately were like, yeah, that's big whitetail country, which I don't know, did we even see a whitetail in South Dakota on the lease?
Not on the lease.
And we saw a mule deer, and we saw a bunch, not a bunch, but a handful of bucks, mostly 2-year-olds, maybe 1 3-year-old.
Yeah. Same deer. It's just kind of some resident mule deer.
Just kind of moving through. But yeah, there was nothing.
Again, and like we've said, tied to that ag field, I'm sure, and a little water source there.
100%. There's nothing to eat.
Yeah.
The cows are everywhere.
A lot of pronghorn.
Yeah. Yeah, we put...
They don't seem to need much, though.
We put a couple moves on pronghorn. Man, that's again, we don't know anything about pronghorn hunting just because we've never done it before, but first of all, I'm not going to sit in a blind on a water hole. Like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to bring the action and stock, and we did. I just don't know how you would get close to one of those damn things, like, in a field, even with, like, our big red moo cow. Like, I don't know how you could get close to those things. They don't sit very long. They
cover country.
Yep. Yeah. And when they run, they don't stop.
Pretty sure we've been chasing a lot of deer or a lot of, like, just animals that people say don't chase after. There's got to be a better way. But. Yeah, and we tried. So the cool thing was we did get permission to a small in that country, but 8,000 acre piece of ground. Yeah. Well, yeah, it wasn't that
additional
small,
lease.
but
Yeah, and it was a really nice drainage, and it was loaded with whitetails.
yeah.
Tons
And
of
and
whitetails.
and muley does too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so like the story with that was I had like kind of tentative permission, like, hey, yeah, get out here. Like I've got some hunters, but I think it'll work. And I was like, okay, cool. So we went to the lease first and tried it for a bit. Like you said, got on that pronghorn, figured out what mule deer were there, none that we wanted to hunt. Mm-hmm. So we went and we're trying to track this guy down, and like he wasn't answering my phone calls. And I mean, it's just landlines out here. There's services
Messages,
spotty. So
servicing, yeah.
I eventually and he invited me to do so. We just went to the address that we had listed for him.
Which seems like his office.
Yeah.
Or the farm office.
Yeah, seems like it was. And so we get out, and I start walking to the door, and this lady named Kim comes out, and she goes, stop, we have COVID. And I was like, oh, okay, all right. And she just had like a short, red hair, and like she did seem like she was running the joint there, And
She was like the business manager.
yeah, so I just kind of explained myself and just told, I was like, yeah, so and so, mentioned giving us permission, but I wanted to just speak with him first, make sure before we just went out and did any hunting. And he also said it was $500 a head is what he had said on the phone. I was like, we're happy to do that, but we're only going to be here for like 2-3 days. And she's like, trust me. She's like, you'll be fine. She's like, go hunt. I was like, really? Like we just go hunt it? And she's like, yes. She's like, I promise it'll be fine. You don't need to talk to him. Like,
yeah, because he had COVID as well. She had COVID. They weren't married or anything.
so,
He had COVID.
and it was enough. Like we got back in the truck, and I was like, is that good enough for you? Like,
I was already driving.
we're driving. Yeah, so we got the permission that we were looking for, and went out. We had already driven past it, saw a bunch of deer, whitetail does and muley does pretty close to the road.
We did see a small muley buck on the north
And
side.
bucks, yeah. And then so we were excited at that point, and we just hiked the drainage out, and like from our experience last year, like it seemed like just stalking these drainages was like a decent approach.
Yeah, when we haven't been able to glass or put a deer to bed.
And I suppose it was down there. That kind of changed once we got up here in the grasslands. But anyways, we walked this whole big drainage out. We spotted a bunch. I don't know if we saw any bucks in that drainage. Probably 20-30 does, though.
We saw a ton of does. No, I don't think we saw a single buck in the drainage.
And we walked down in there probably 1.5 miles, 2 miles. And eventually got to a point that we're like, all right, well, here is the food source. There was deer in it when we got out to it.
Yep. It's like an old alfalfa field.
And I think we saw pronghorn out at it. And
we had seen a stud pronghorn when we pulled in with a bunch of does.
That's right.
And then
really nice one.
Yeah, and then when we were in
when
we were in that field, we had that real nice 2-year-old 10-point come up out of the bottom.
Yeah.
And then Bachman was like, hey, there's pronghorn in this field too.
Yeah.
And so at that point it was like, cool, like what do we want to do here? Like it wasn't getting dark, but we probably had an hour and 20 minutes left or something. So yeah, it was like, all right, well, I'm gonna go shoot that pronghorn.
This was day 2 of the trip, right?
Yeah, this is the opening day still, though, right? Yeah, this is still opening day.
Yeah.
We hunted the morning.
Yep.
At the place, and then we were like, okay, we know what deer are here. Like, let's go talk to some of these landowners.
Yep. Because we had gone and talked to the other one too. Did we talk to that other landowner that day too?
Yep, we talked to Jody that day too.
That's right.
So we had scouted the night before, and we saw some bucks, which was encouraging. Next morning, we get up, we get on the roof, we see bucks, we go after that pronghorn.
That's right.
And then it was kind of like, cool.
Yeah, man, this whole trip we've been quick.
Yeah.
Quick to, we got to find deer in a few days.
Yeah, so it's still opening day that we're doing. So, yeah, and not for pronghorn. Pronghorn's been open for 2 weeks or something.
Yep.
So we're like, okay, we're gonna split up at this point. So Bachman comes with me, Strauss stays with you. You're watching this drainage. You guys move into a little bit better position.
Just a little bit. Well, we saw that whitetail buck come out of these like reeds down below. Everything was so dry up top, and the only green was like this, whatever it was.
It was an old riverbed.
Reeds or just tall grass running down through the bottom with the ag source up above it. So we went to where that little buck had come from, and we're like, maybe more deer will come up out of this bottom and do the same thing. Sure enough. There was a nice whitetail that came out of there. I mean, I think nice.
Several whitetail, right?
Yes, several. I mean, at least one that I would have shot because I did shoot at him. Basically, is what happened. Yeah, man. We weren't sitting there for, I don't know. What do you think? 20 minutes, half hour tops. And before you know it, I start seeing more deer down in these reeds and stuff. And we got these Nikon stabilized binoculars.
Canons.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Canons. And just started seeing some deer down there. And I think at first I was like, man, that's a decent deer, and then I think Colton's got me just saying the next couple minutes, I'm like, dude, that's a pretty nice deer right there. And then eventually I'm like, oh, I'm shooting it. Yeah, if he comes up here,
progression has come through.
I'm shooting that deer. And he wasn't massive. He probably would have been in the high 30s, but I think he was definitely mature. And he had kickers off of like both his twos and real nice brow tines. And we've got the footage, so we'll drop that in a film here at some point.
And I think we at this point had already decided that based on what we were seeing in South Dakota and who we talked to, we're going to North Dakota the next day.
Yeah, we were coming up. We were working with limited time.
Yeah, we thought we were going to spend up to 2-3 days in South Dakota,
unless we really got into them. In which case,
we weren't, at least at that point. So we had kind of already determined, and we already told her we were going to be here for a day or two. So we're like, well, let's just get up there for the opener in North Dakota, and we'll scout anyway. It's good to be here in South Dakota, but this is it. So yeah, I mean, this was like probably the last. We hunted the next morning, I guess, but this was the last night of hunting for us in South Dakota. First and last, all in the same breath.
So basically what happened is we got eyes on this buck, and then we saw a few others as well, and they start coming, like the same way that smaller buck had done. And we're just laying kind of on this open hillside. Like I didn't feel exposed, but we were just like laying back on our packs and watching him. He's maybe 300-400 yards the first time that we saw him, and we spent some time down there and eventually started working towards us. I was like, dude, they're coming. I was like, and then that's what I'm saying. I'm shooting that buck if he comes in here. And our wind was nice. I mean, so we were just on this little bank here, and that smaller buck had come right this,
right around the bank
in front of us, and then right up the side here. So I thought our wind was good, and this ag source was right over our.
And they seemed to all kind of be going for that corner. There was like sheep in the far pasture, so it seemed like it was keeping those deer
seemed
close.
Like we were kind of in the pinch point.
Yep.
And they're coming, and at some point he's like halfway there. I look over, and there's I think it was a fawn or a small doe. I just see running. I'm figuring she must have caught our wind. I mean, it's right there. I didn't think it would hurt anything, but sure enough, she runs down back towards those bucks, and he just kind of holds up, and it was enough.
Does what a mature buck does.
It was enough. Yep. He just turned around and just starts walking back, and he got almost back to where he'd come from, and there was another nice. It was a whitetail, so I can call him an 8-point. And he was either probably a 3, maybe 4-year-old buck, but he was decent. Came over the hill there, and that big buck, even though he's still in velvet, he started like rubbing a tree, like showing his dominance and stuff, and he was still in full velvet. And once those two joined up, that 8-point, I guess, distracted him enough that he's like, oh, we're going back to the food source, And so they just turn around and start coming right back. I was like, dude, they're all coming. Here we go. So we had the 8-point, we had the one I was after with kickers on his twos. There was a 2-year-old and a doe, and they were all coming. And I was like, this could happen here, man. And it almost did, and just like they do, instead of, coming down in front of us like that younger buck had done, they found a little drainage, just to our right, which was downwind, and they came all the way up and got right behind us, and I was ready for it. I mean, I flipped around, I was on my stomach, and when they came up there, they were directly downwind. They all stopped. I ranged them 70 yards. Coming out here, my intention was to keep 60 and in was my goal, but it just didn't look that far, and I've practiced out to 80, and I felt really solid at it, and I was like, I'm shooting them, especially with as desolate as it kind of seemed like it was. And I don't actually know exactly what happened. I thought he just ducked and wheeled away, which he definitely did. I don't think I would have hit him.
Yeah, he was going pretty high.
But on the footage, it looks really high, which is odd because usually, if anything, I shoot low. Just because coming from target panic, that's just something that I do, and so I don't know. I don't know what happened other than it's just a super far shot, and
a lot of things can happen.
I can, I am glad that I took the shot because it was a clean miss. I'm like, man, I'm glad I tried. But had I wounded that deer, I probably wouldn't say it. I probably would have said, man, I shouldn't have taken that shot. But either way, I mean, they ran away unscathed, and we found out within minutes you had taken a shot as well.
So when we left, Bachman and I were going, I'm like, we're killing this pronghorn. Like, this thing's dead. We start going up the hill, and I look up the drainage, and here comes this Chevy, like, truck.
You said ripping at you,
like,
huh?
50 miles an hour. And I was like, dude, that's on the main road, right? And, like, it's getting closer. I'm like, he's on, like, this property. And it was kind of one of those, like, oh shit moments. Like, all right, Kim doesn't have any authority. Like, this is the landowner about to come rip us a new one, right? Mm-hmm. So I told Bachman, I was like, hey, man, we're going to have to go down and, like, talk to this guy. So
you're like, you better go talk to that guy.
Yeah, I'm going to go kill this pronghorn. You better go talk to this guy and just see what he has to do. Mm-hmm. So I was like, all right, we'll go down. So, like, pronghorn and Stalk aborted, right? I'm kind of preparing for the worst I figured it was the landowner that you had been talking to, and so I figured it'd be fine, right? That, plus I'll keep my distance.
I guess I can say, yeah, we're not going back. Clark was the landowner.
Yeah. And so the guy pulls up, and he's like, yeah, I'm kind of like the hunting manager for this property. And I'm like, oh, okay.
We didn't know there was one of those.
Yeah, I was like, well, we talked to Kim, and she was like, yeah, I mean, I kind of get some money on the side when I'm, like, getting guys on this property. And I was like, all right. And the guy lives, like, right next door, right? Like, right next to the property. Mm-hmm. And so, like, he was fine with us. Like, it basically, like, I apologized. I was like, hey, man, we weren't trying to step in here and do anything. Like, we had been talking with Blake, and it was, or Clark, and he seemed pretty cool with us. And he's like, yeah, it's just this property is kind of like my property. Like, I don't let anybody hunt it, but, like, my wife and kids. And it's just, like, that same spiel. Yeah. I was like, okay, cool, man. I was like, well, if you want us to get out. He's like, no. He's like, you guys are here.
Had it been a really good property, I would have instigated a little more. I'd be like, so do you own this property, or?
Well, he didn't. He told me he didn't. And I said, well, yeah, I saw your name.
I said, well, Clark said we could hunt here for $500 a head for a week.
Yeah, and he said, like, oh, yeah, it could be, I own that little piece of property up there. Because I thought there was some better property.
I wonder if he does, or if he just leases it from Clark. He just lives there.
I think it's just BS. He does own property.
Okay.
But... So he was fine. He's like, hey, just go ahead. And I was like, well, listen, man, like, the big deal for us is, like, we're potentially looking at something in South Dakota for next year. We're not sure if we're coming back, but it's over the counter. And
which really was our intention.
That was the intention.
We're just trying to figure out a place for in the future. Like, we can draw, it's over the counter. So we can go back to South Dakota.
Private land.
If we have a good spot. So that was our hope. Yeah.
The two things that were kind of the initial turnoff was he basically was like, yeah, this is whitetail country, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, well, cool. Like, not that I don't want to kill a big whitetail, but, like, if I want to kill a whitetail in South Dakota, I'll go on the other side of the state because it's 7 hours closer. Yep. And I brought up muleys. I was like, yeah, like, we're really here for muleys. He's like, yeah, you're not going to find many down here, but, he's telling me about these whitetail bucks. Cool. I was like, I also have a pronghorn tag. And he's like, yeah, there's plenty of those here. Just, hard to get to. And so I was like, yeah, man. I was like, well, we'll pull out. And he's like, no, just stay and hunt today. Like, no, you enjoy the evening. You're out here. And I was like, well, tell me about what we could do next year. And, like, he immediately...
I guess that's a pretty nice camera you got there.
He eyeballed Colton's camera, and then he eyeballed my RX-5 and was like, yeah, like, a couple $1,000 per head or so. And I was like, oh, cool, man. Yeah, just here's my card. You can call me sometime.
Yeah.
So he leaves, right? And I'm all jacked off at that point because I'm just like...
Shannon. I was trying to think it was a girl's name, not Kelly.
And I'm just like, okay.
No offense to anybody named Shannon.
Now what, right? We've got an hour, maybe. That pronghorn is fucking long gone at this point. So we get up on this rock, and Bachman and I are sitting there, and I'm just like... I was like, I don't know, dude. I was like, we'll just glass this field. Maybe something will come up from Jared. Maybe that big pronghorn will come back in that group. And we're just sitting on this rock. It's like 5 minutes, right? And I look at this hillside like 2 miles away, and I'm like, oh, there's deer. And I pull up, I'm like, oh, that's muley bucks, like, coming. Mm-hmm. And I was like, there's shooters in there. And I looked at him, I was like, we got to close the distance fast. And so... Again,
like with nothing in between you, just like
nothing,
desolate
sage.
And like water.
Like maybe some sage, like 1 or 2 humps, and like nothing.
Maybe some sage.
Yeah, there's like nothing, and it's like
see that sage bush at 200 yards. I'm gonna run at it.
I bet when we first saw them come over, between us and them is 2 miles, and so I was like, let's just go right at them, run right at them, right? And so that's what we did. We basically hauled ass. We got down on this bottom, and we just start running and we put a couple bushes in between us and them. And there was that pronghorn group kind of distracted them a little bit because we bumped them and they kind of worked off to the north. And so they kept eyes on those for a while, and they picked up a doe. It looked like there was a pond on the north. And so the ultimate thing is everything's so dry, there's a big water hole in the middle of this field, like a man-made source of water. And I finally realized, I'm like, dude, they're going for that water hole, right? We have to get close to that because that's where the shot's going to
It was an actual trough, right?
It was a trough.
Yeah.
Pumped out.
Is that what they're called? Troughs?
Water trough.
Water hole?
Yeah, it's a water trough.
Yeah, there's a lot of them out here this year. And we saw a bunch of farmers driving around filling them up.
And so I was like, dude, we have to get this. But there is literally no cover. In fact, 2 or 3 pieces that we covered, there was not a sage bush in it. It was like a 200-yard stretch of just grass, and we just were head down going. And so it's getting darker, and we're making moves, and we're probably, I think I ranged it, I don't know, Bachman, if you remember, it's like 300 or 400 yards that I ranged it where we stopped and you set up.
Yeah, it was about.
Yeah. So, and I was like, hey man, listen, there's nothing in between here and there, and especially as we get closer, why don't you set up here, tripod, and I'm getting up there. Mm-hmm. And so the next part I cross is 200 yards of open nothing, right? And then 50 yards of sage, and then it's 100 yards. I ranged it. I was 110 yards from...
Could you see them at that point?
Yeah, and they were coming down the hill, and so what I was doing, I was keeping the trough between us, and they still probably could have saw me if they wanted to, but it gave enough breakup that it would have been hard. And so I got to the edge of... It's just grass. It's grass all around the trough, and I range it. It's
dead grass.
Dead grass.
Dead dry grass.
Just this one. Yeah. And so I range it. It's 110 yards, and I'm I jump one more time, jump one more time. I'm 105, and that's as far. I'm flat on my belly at that point. They're 40, 50 yards on the other side and closing. Mm-hmm. And so at that point, I'm almost hey, this is a win, right? I've closed the distance. I'm gonna be within 100 yards of these deer. I know at that point there's one shooter in the group. And I'm I don't know what to do. So I'm laying flat on my belly, got Hoyt out in front of me. I range 2 or 3 spots, and I'm 80, 70, 60. I know my spots. And so I throw it on 80 just because, again, you, I've been shooting to 80. Crank her up. And I'm okay, this is probably where they're going to be. But if they're at 70, I'll aim a little lower. If it's at 60, I'll aim a little lower, right? That's my mindset.
Wow.
At least initially, right? This comes back to haunt me. Mm-hmm. And it really was because at this point, I'm thinking, there's no way these deer are getting...
If it's 80, I'll hold a little high.
Yeah, there's no way that these deer are going to get closer than the water trough. They're going to be at the water trough drinking. They're going to look down, and I'm laying flat in this grass on my belly like this. Mm-hmm. It's not going to happen. So I've got everything ready, set up. They come up to the water hole. I see the better bucks, and he was good. I think he was a 4x3.
I think that's right. He was missing a 4.
Yep. And so I'm laying there's a cattle trail right off my right hand side. In fact, part of my body's on it. And this young buck finally kind of gets pushed around the water hole, and he starts working to my left. Because they're going to this alfalfa field. They came down and drank. Now they're going to this alfalfa field.
That's where they were going?
100%.
Yeah. How far was that from the alfalfa field, do you think?
Probably 500 yards, 600 yards.
Okay.
I would say. And so he's kind of eyeballing me, right, as this is coming up. And then, at that point, I'm all right, well, we're kind of screwed here. He sees me, and he's probably at 70, 65, 60, and he's, on me. He's this isn't right, something's here. And meanwhile, I, look to the right, and that big one starts walking right down the cattle trail, right at me. I'm all right, well, at some point, he's going to turn, there's my 80 mark, there's my 70 mark. He's at 50... Now he's at 40. He's at 40 yards and doesn't see me laying flat. And so this is where, again, limited mule deer hunting experience, but everything that we've seen is if we spook those deer, they kind of trot off and then they
yep.
What was that, right? So at 40 yards, I'm I'm trying to get to my dial. I can't move. This deer's at 35 to my right, and I'm nailed down. And so I was I'm going to jump up, and I'm hoping he runs out to either my 70 or 80 mark, and I'm going to let one fly. And so I pop up like Spider-Man reflexes. I still don't. Well, we have the clips. I don't know how I got off the ground. I like levitated.
It's impressive.
I think it was all core strength.
Yeah.
And
That would be back. Yeah. Lumbar. Yeah.
and go into full draw. He does. He spooks. He runs off and turns. And I mean, I settle in on him, and I knew he was closer than 80, and like my mind just didn't read it, and I just locked in on him and shot over his back. Mm-hmm. I should have locked down on him lower. And again, like yours, like I don't regret. There was no wind, right? I mean, it was dead calm. I don't regret the shot. Again, if I probably hit him, I probably would, but or if I'm in a bad shot at least. But like, it's just so funny because you're processing so many. Like I'm processing distance. This buck's watching me. What am I gonna do here? Draw here, and like there's muscle memory that takes place. But like in that moment when you draw, and again in retrospect, I probably had another 3 seconds that I probably could have took my time and honed in on him and dropped down.
Well,
but
I mean, dude, hindsight's always 20/20.
Yeah.
I know I do this with every deer that I shoot at or blow a stock on, is just try to learn from it. I think you jumping up scared the crap out of that deer.
it did.
And I think
Do you think if I would have set up, it would have been easier?
he would have not known what you were. It still would have eventually boogered him. But I think if you would have tried to kind of draw and just kind of sit up on him, he would have just stood there and looked at you for a minute, and there's a chance he might have kind of turned to like go, and you might have been able to shoot him at 40. I don't think he would have ran if you came up slightly. Because he would have taken a minute.
The problem was that I couldn't reach, that buck was so close I couldn't reach my dial to turn down.
Yeah.
So like I would rather have shot him. It sounds stupid. I would rather have shot him at 70 than 40 because of what my dial was set on. Because that would have had to turn that, then come up, and I couldn't. I was stuck, man. I was on.
There's like a point with every deer, and it's probably different with every deer, but in every situation. But like, there's a period of time where it's like, how long does it take him to figure out what you are and to decide to run? Mm-hmm. And I think that had you come up slower, that period of time would have been elongated.
I think I probably would have had a better opportunity to come up slower had I been able to adjust my dial. Like if I got to my dial and knocked it down to 50, then I probably would have been a lot cooler with the process. Versus 80, I was almost already in panic mode because he was too close.
I wonder how long you would have stood there. Like if you had just done what you had to do to adjust it, come up, draw on your bow, if he would have stood there for another 4 or 5 seconds.
Mm. And the other thing is, like, again, because it's wide open, I was like, when I was sitting up, I was ranging cattle trails.
Yep.
I can't see those cattle trails when I'm down.
Yeah.
So when he's standing there, I'm trying to think, like, that's 40. So he ended up being, when I shot at him, he was at 66.
Okay.
Which is why I sailed it over his back.
Okay.
But, like, I don't know if I would have even been able to know he was at 40, because I ranged him after the fact.
Yeah. Oh, man. It's so tough with no cover.
Strauss and I today even, like, I'm like, dude, how far do you think that hillside is? Range at 97. I'm like, are you kidding me?
I know. It's crazy. It's a lot further out here.
And I'm like I would have looked at that and be like 60. Mm-hmm. And I ranged it, I'm like 97. There's no, your depth perception's so off because all the landscape is just, first of all, it's all dead and just brown.
There's less reference points.
And it just fades up and over.
Yeah. It's tough when you get out here, man. Everything is just, I mean, we talked even before we came out here about the maps, like looking at this and looking at this. I'm like, where are we? Like, this is not the same. Where were we?
Well, we were just talking about the depth perception and distance and like how everything
and hindsight on that deer.
Well, and
I do, because you do that. That's like your thing. And I have things too, so you feel free to call me out. But you like to jump up on those things, and it freaks them out. Remember that buck that you hit a couple of years ago in the single lung up on the mountain?
Yes.
Yeah. Had you come up on that deer, he'd have stayed right there, and he would have just looked at you.
Yeah.
But you sprung up. And he was like, whoa, and luckily it gave him a heart attack. It did kill him, even though you shot him in the Achilles tendon.
It's crazy. I do, and it's just, again, you're processing so many things that you're just trying to, like, in my mind, I'm just trying to get up as quick as I can and get on. And I felt solid on it. Had he been at 80.
I just think, especially these mule deer, maybe not whitetail, but these muleys will let you get away with more. If you come up,
100%.
just be slow about it, be deliberate about your movement, and execute it, and they'll let you do it.
I think, again, the big thing that we're finding out, we talked about that distance. a lot of here, so we leave South Dakota empty-handed, right?
Speaking of distance, you don't want to come out here 30 yards tops. Like a
you're
lot
screwed.
of whitetail guys are like, yeah, I'm good out to 30.
No, you're screwed.
Yeah, you need to be good out
Well,
to
and I mean,
50,
I think
60
you
at
and I have
least.
been practicing out to 80, though I rarely would take a shot out to 80 unless it's like
So would
calm
I.
conditions.
Yeah.
I sailed one at 80, but like I felt like based on my target shooting, like I could kill a deer at 80.
Yeah.
Probably could kill a deer further than 80. I won't take that.
Yeah.
In fact, we'll talk about it here in a little bit. The buck that Colton and I stalked yesterday, I could have slung, what was that, 79, I think I ranged him at. I just did. It was so windy. I was just like,
Oh, well,
no.
that wind is a huge factor, too. There are situations where you're not shooting past 30 yards because of that wind.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, there's no way to hold on it.
Yeah, so we leave South Dakota. I mean, shots fired. In fact, the boys got great footage of it. Which is cool. And they're like, listen, we missed, and that's just part of it. And if you think you're going to come out here and not sling arrows, and you're probably
Pretty sure those were on the only shots fired on this trip.
They were
within probably 10 minutes of each other in some of the most desolate country we were in.
It's in the only. I don't think I full. I did gum the full draw once yesterday, but I didn't know what buck it was.
Yeah.
So I didn't shoot. But yeah, other than that, that's the only shots fired.
So from there, he basically kicked us off. He was like, well, hunt tonight, and
Yeah, you're done.
that's it. So
And he ended up coming back and picking us up and giving us a ride to our truck.
Yeah.
I thought at one point he was just going to bury us in the South Dakota desert.
dude, people are just like that. I mean, I appreciate, well, I asked him.
Well, he
came out, he just wanted to,
He thought we were TV show guys. That's what it was.
he wanted to be on TV.
That's what he thought, we were TV show guys. I mean,
He's like, hey.
I think honestly, that's probably why he said it was 2,000 ahead. Is he looked at my gear and Colton's gear and was like, "Oh yeah, these guys are like filming for shows."
I see.
And it was like, "No, guys, like check out our podcast. We get 100 views."
Yeah, literally hundreds of people will see you. It's awesome.
Hey, I mean, if that's it. Because then I think we cleared that up at the truck. We were like, yeah, like we do marketing and advertising in the industry, like, but we don't do TV shows and stuff necessarily.
Well, so he came.
And he was like, oh,
We're walking back through the field, which it's a long walk, at least 2 miles.
We see the truck coming again.
And here he comes. Yeah, we're like, here he's coming. Again, we were like not sure if he was on that property, but eventually he made it to us, and I was like, you might as well give us a ride back while you're here. He's like, yeah, hop in the back, and so he took us probably
He really just came to see if we killed anything.
Yeah, and it was really funny. We were standing back there just kind of BSing, and he's like, it's been tough this year, and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, he's like, there's a nice 8-point or whatever. He's got kickers on his twos. He's like, did you see him? I was like, yeah, I saw him. And he's like, he said, yeah. He's like, I think he's at least, what did he think, 5 or 6?
He thought 5 or 6, yeah.
And I'd agree.
And I mean, he's the one who told me there were no muleys. We got a shot on a shooter muley. Yeah. And then the only one he was really worried about is he said there's like a 160-inch 10-point in there.
Gotcha.
Which, yeah, it's awesome.
Maybe.
But yeah, it was just good experience, good trip.
And we made the call right there. We're like, okay,
we did
because we're off this spot. The lease is out. The other landowners, we just weren't able to make that happen. So we decided to pack up and head north the next morning.
Well, and before we leave there, we did make some good contacts with Jody, who's another landowner who he's very particular about who he takes on. Great guy.
Came out of the pasture with a super whitetail shed.
Yeah. Has a strong mustache.
Very strong. Yeah, we were both like hiding ours. We're like, Jody, so nice to meet you.
He gives you your handkerchief. He's like, "Can you?"
got a little schmutz on your.
A super guy, just a farm boy, but he's very particular because he's like, listen, I take 3 guys or 4 guys at the most. I don't take any more than 3 to 4 deer and 3 to 4 pronghorn off of this thing. I was like, well, that's 100% success rate, so that's pretty good. Mm-hmm. But he definitely knows the area, knows
nice looking property, right at the foot of Hell's Canyon. And actually, we figured out it's right next to like an outfit.
Yeah, which we might know the guy. We haven't looked.
I don't know him personally.
I think I know who the guy, which is a small world if it is, right? But the guy's basically saying he's got 17,000 acres. He's got no more than 7. In fact, Shannon said the same thing.
That's what the outfit was like. Yeah, that dude's a liar.
Yeah, and he's taken 40 guys this year hunting on there. And he's like, we had an elk. Jody said we had bull elk up on Hell's Canyon, And he said that guy just pushed him out because, like, they're just putting pressure on there.
Yeah.
He said all the muleys
They're out, like,
are
in the grasslands.
Yeah, pushed them all out of there. Because, like, he's just putting pressure on them, riding people out on four-wheelers and stuff.
Yeah.
From Wisconsin. So, yeah. So, hey, good trip. We do hunt the lease the next morning. I don't think we put any stalks on, did we?
Well, we packed up that night, and we're like, well, let's just, because we weren't in a rush, because it wasn't until at least the following day. That would have been on the 3rd that we shot at those whitetails. Season didn't open here in North Dakota till the 5th.
No. It was the 1st we shot on those whitetails.
I'm sorry, yeah, the 1st. Doesn't open until the 3rd. Mm-hmm. So
we left
the morning of the 4th.
2nd.
Yeah. Why am I thinking it's the 5th? Morning of the 2nd.
It's been a long week.
We sat on the camper and just didn't see anything.
We saw the same buck.
Same deer.
And so the rain was coming in Thursday night, and we were in some sludge. He's like, Jody, all these guys are like, you don't want to get caught when it rains. So we pull out morning of the 2nd to head to North Dakota.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. Because we wanted the evening of the 2nd and the morning of the 3rd to scout. Because season doesn't open here till the noon on the 3rd.
Yep. And we needed to get out before the rain on the 3rd.
So we pulled out and started driving. It's not very far. It's 2 hours, which was awesome. Because after 26 hours, it was...
gun to the head.
Yeah, it was not bad. Mm-hmm. And so we got up here, and the whole time we're like, oh, wait till you guys see this. Talking to the Coltons, we're like...
We saw 15 plus shooter bucks in a field every night when we drove by. You were watching 180s, 20 yards.
It's almost like we're leaving the desert to go to the promised land. Here was the hope, anyways. And we got here, and it seems like that.
She's dry as a bone.
She's dry, and the deer just kind of left with the moisture, I guess.
I think that's one thing that we're, we don't know. We're maybe going to try to get a North Dakota biologist or something on, but...
I know. I'd love an explanation.
It seems like... So, I mean, every alfalfa field, every bottom, every pasture that was, like, lush green last year and full of deer is just dead and brown. I mean, it literally sounds like we left... I think it was Labor Day. We left last year, Monday, and it monsooned, right? I think that's the last time they got rain. Yeah. Seriously. They said that they've gotten 3 inches of precipitation in 12 months.
Yeah.
It rained a hell of a lot that day. I remember we were sitting
That's insane. We were 3 inches in 12 months? Did we get that like in a good rain at home?
We were sitting in the camper eating breakfast. It's pouring. It's cold out, and we're like, we finished
the rest of our beer and our eggs, and we headed home.
We were out, man, and like they got 3 inches of rain since then. And so, like, everything that we knew to be lush and green and kind of like our go-to was desolate. I mean, fields that we saw 50, 60 whitetails in, which we didn't even care about, and 10-plus shooters in, didn't have a deer in the field. Not a deer in the field. Not just does, no deer.
Just looks like a scorched lawn from, like, at home.
And so, like, it kind of threw us in a bit of a panic mode. Because now it's like, well... we're back to, like, looking for deer. So we go to the Badlands, which is not necessarily what we plan to hunt, but kind of. And, like, they move all the cattle around because there's no food. So, like, all the cattle that were confined to 2 or 3 parts of the Badlands cover the entire Badlands now. Every piece of Badland that we were in had cattle in it.
Yeah. I mean, humbling for sure. Like, I don't know how we could have known that, but it was like... we were just so confident that we were coming into where these deer were, and they're just not here. Well,
we've talked to locals. Hope just stopped over.
They're just not here.
She's got thousands of acres of lease, and she's like, yeah, I haven't seen a buck.
It's just not something that I think we expected as, like, whitetail guys. Like, those deer don't just pick up and move, but these ones did.
The muleys have, and this is what we want to talk to the North Dakota biologist. And I assume, like, we're making assumptions, but it seems like these deer have migrated out of these areas to where crops or food are.
And it's possible, yeah. I mean, like, so we sat up right here above the camper. So we're parked right here on a piece of ground that we can hunt. It's like 300 acres.
Mm-hmm. And we thought, if it was last year, there would have been some giant bucks in this spot.
It's got a nice drainage back here. That's where we started. We started just right up on top. And there's sign back here. We found sheds, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, little shed. We did find these sheds up north, but... there's a bunch of whitetails down here in the bottom, and some of those
saw a decent 10-point down here.
Are still hitting this food source over here. Is a wheat field, But those muleys that were there last year have up and left, and so from up on this high point, I could see some to the south of town. I guess there's something over there that they like.
So that's where Friday morning, Thursday night, we all didn't see shit. We didn't see much of anything.
Yeah.
So Friday morning, you and Bachman stayed.
So here,
here.
let me get it straight. So Thursday was which day?
First, that was the day before opener.
Day before opener.
We
went up
here.
and sat right up above camper.
Yep, none of us saw anything
Just
because we were
whitetails.
just split up there. Yep. And then Friday morning, which is opening day, but doesn't start till noon, you and Bachman stayed here to go and glass up on the top, thinking something's going to show. Strauss and I hit the road.
Because there was a nice fresh rub up here, I thought. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a water tank up there they put for the deer
in hindsight, dude, probably a whitetail.
Probably. And then Strauss and I hit the road heading, there's basically one road that goes north. Yep.
Cruising.
Let's just try to
still
get eyes
confident, like, dude, these bucks couldn't have left.
Yeah, well, they're here. You guys called us at probably
not long.
7:30. And you're like, yeah, we've seen everything. They're not here.
Same stuff as last night.
Yep. And at that point, I don't think Strauss and I have even seen.
Nope.
We haven't seen a buck, right? And so
you guys went and hit all the same fields, or like
yeah. And so we're literally, I picture it in my head. You and I roll to a part of the Badlands where we hit the grassland areas, and we're like, well, we're out of muley, like we're out of them, right? We get literally that point. I look out my window and there's 4 shooter muleys. We're in the middle. It's just rolling grass, and they just are.
That was just you and Colton because we were still set up here. You guys had gone north.
They're just walking up
to
over
look.
the hill.
You're like, dude, we have to find deer.
And we're 35 minutes north at this point.
So the way we found that is a landowner just east of town here told me that was a good spot for muleys. And in fact, a little further north than where you're at, there's a bunch of drainage and stuff.
Drainages. That's where I was headed.
We weren't seeing deer here, and dude, every sit, like every morning and evening counts. Like when we're not finding deer, we needed to go out and try a new spot every time and make sure that we could locate.
And it's kind of starting to put the pieces together that this is going to be harder than we thought.
Yeah. Slowly but surely. Yeah.
Yeah. We were headed for that piece of plots land, and like all of a sudden I'm like, there they are. There's shooters here, and it just was so back up, park the truck, run up to the top, and like it's just rolling grass hills, like for as far as you can see, rolling grass, no drainages. And I'm just like, I'm so confused at this point. I have no idea what's going on. Like, this is not anything that we hunted last year. I don't know where those bucks went. Have no freaking idea. And so Strauss and I basically, I was like, hey, let's hike to this back and see if we can get them, get on them, right? And there's a few drainages out in this back. At this point, we don't realize that we're like a mile from Montana. And we get to this back drainage, and we watch probably a bunch of does come out. We see a big group of pronghorns. We do see a really good buck, a big buck, come down off of this, looked like an old alfalfa field, into this drainage.
Dude, in hindsight, it had to be that buck that we...
Yeah.
Yeah.
The giant. Yeah, I mean, because I'm talking mile and a half away, and I'm just seeing, like, tall, just what... I was like, yeah, that's giant.
And as, odds would have... Luck? As luck would have it, literally the one piece of private land, amongst hundreds of thousands of acres of public.
And this became the story of the week, right? Is that this side of the road was really good. We obviously leave there. There's one piece of private land.
Is that where you saw them?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's how we figured the spot out. You saw those 4 shooters and the big one.
Yep.
Gotcha.
And then I called you, and I was like, "Hey, we got to come up here. This is where the bucks are."
Yeah.
So we decided to start at
grasslands.
Noon. We do circle up.
No Badlands up there.
We finally look at the plots, which is Badlands, and we're like, okay, this is good. And then right at noon, we land at the grasslands, and it's like, "Hey, I know where this buck is. Let's go kill him." Right. So we get out to that high point, and we're glassing and understanding the drainage.
Rainy. We came into the first day here.
50 degrees and rainy.
Yeah.
Like first rain they've had in months.
Miserable.
It was. And then, to make it more miserable, I look at Onyx, and I'm like, I done fucked up. Like, that's in Montana. Mm-hmm. Like, again, from...
Yeah, you're like, no, that's private. I was like, no, that's Montana. It is private, and it's Montana.
So now we're looking at this thing, and it's like, so where this big buck drops in this drain, like, I had him pinpointed. I'm like, this is where he's at. We'll just still hunt this. It's Montana. And so, now you're looking at the phone, and it's like... It's raining, it's cold, it's miserable. and you're like, okay, here's this chunk of public, which you had called the guy for the private land, talked to his wife, and we've texted him 32 times probably.
Who's that?
Vern.
Okay.
And
hey, Vern. Hey, it's Jared Pressure calling you again here.
Hey, not calling to talk about. Just want to see if you had any cattle for sale. Not interested in hunting. But maybe.
But if you do have any muleys, we sure would love to just pop on there for.
And it's just this one piece of 300 acres, and it's just the spot, right?
It's a good spot.
And so you've got all this grasslands around it, and there's one little sliver of grasslands on the side, and then it's Montana. So what we first think we're dealing with is just Vern's property. He's in the center. Then all of a sudden, it's probably 1 o'clock because we're working down in the sticks.
Yeah. And here, I want to give kind of just some context for all you guys that are hunting North Dakota that couldn't find mule deer this year. What we hunted last year was Badlands.
100%.
Surrounding big ag.
Yep.
And what we ended up finding deer on this year was essentially grasslands. There's a lot of grasslands. But they're just big drainages, so
brushy.
It seems like if you would follow them clear down to the river, there is Badlands down by the river, but a few miles off of them, way up in the grasslands, there's where there's not cows, or in some cases where there's fewer cows per pasture type of deal. There's, what did she call it? We just talked to her. There's a type of buckbrush. And I don't know if that's what they would eat
that's what they're eating
on
now.
any other year, but that's what they're eating now. And if you could find a hillside, or a drainage that's full of buckbrush and cedars, and you almost caught it, yeah.
Oh, you almost got it.
That's where we found these bucks, and dude, we freaking got into them.
I mean, I would not be surprised. And again, some of these are the same bucks over and over again. We probably had north of 70 buck sightings this week.
Wow, we're at 70.
Easily.
I would have said at least 50.
Or both north of 70. We saw 17.
Let me do a quick count in my head here.
We saw 18 just yesterday.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm gonna say there was roughly 10 shooters that we encountered on those two properties, which is within a.
I bet there was more than that. I bet it's closer to 13 or 14. If you count some of those bucks, the big one, and some of those deer, Colton and I.
What day are we talking here? Day 1, there was probably 8 or 9. Day 10, there was probably 12 or 13, based on our standards.
Yeah, probably.
Over the course of time, we're like, oh, I'm shooting that.
Well, and so when we work down in that ditch, we're and it's miserable, man. It's freaking raining.
The day it was raining.
And it's 50 degrees.
Yep.
50 degrees in rain, and we're not dressed for 50 degrees in rain, probably.
Yep. No, we definitely weren't.
And we're sitting there thinking, I don't know what to do. Here's where this line is. We're so disoriented. We get in this bottom. We're trying to use the map. And it's not Onyx's fault. It's just everything just looks so different. Where's the lines? Where's the drainage? Where's Montana?
Yep.
And all of a sudden I look and I'm like, everybody get down.
Yep.
And they're right there, 250 yards across from us. And there were 2 shooters in that group probably at that time.
1. Well, 1 that we saw.
That 3-year-old we probably would have shot.
Maybe.
Well, I don't know. Maybe
and
not.
There was one. I was there's one deer, and
he was junk.
He was junk.
Junk genetics. 3x2.
Yeah, I think he was probably 4.
Mm-hmm. The 3-year-old who was with him at that time.
We never saw that deer again, did we?
At that time, we probably wouldn't have shot him, just because we had some pretty high hopes still. But today we would have killed the shit out of him.
I put a stalk on him. I started stalking him.
Well, no. I'm saying the 3-year-old, not the 4-year-old 3x2.
Oh yeah.
We would kill the shit out of him today.
I don't honestly even remember what he looked like, but
it's just a straight 4x4.
Yeah, so we were in a tough spot. They had seen us, and we just laid right down, and it was raining. It just started pouring.
We're
with camera equipment
on our backs, glassing these deer. It's raining. We're just soaked.
Bachman's got a bright yellow golf bag looking thing over his camera, just waving it in the wind.
Look like Pennywise with the red balloon.
Yeah.
He's like, hey guys.
I was like, bro, can you get that a little lower?
I've got some alfalfa for you.
Up on a tripod.
Why don't you come down here? I've got some alfalfa.
So eventually they were far away, so they just kind of forgot about us. And I was like, well,
They probably couldn't see through the blinding rain either.
I was like, I hate to use, because you gave me the first stock of the trip. I was like, I hate to use it on this piece of shit deer. I was like, all right, whatever to call him. I was like, all right, we're gonna go put a piece of shit stock on a piece of shit deer, because he was in an impossible spot.
Well, dude, and what it looked
like 50 yards from Montana. I was like, there's no way.
It looked like just little rolling knobs and like a little funnel point back to the Montana line, but it ends up being like just big drainages back there, like deep.
So we got out and around. Here's how this stock went. We backed out and around. I'm sure they probably saw us running that way, but I don't know. We got around this little just knoll here, and we bumped some does out of like the little drainage that was right in front of us. And I think that's what buggered that ended up being what spoiled it.
So Strauss and I hung back. We watched the does come around. It's like 3 of them. They kind of alerted them. They really alerted. So 2 of the bucks, including the one you were trying to shoot, had moved to the right. The other 3 had stayed, but then they got up when those does came out and started moving. And so like I'm sitting there glassing, and I'm like, okay, like they're a little nervous. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, like giant.
I'm already stalking.
Yeah, I'm like giant. And so, and again, like it
still biggest deer we saw on the trip.
Looks like small little drainages and stuff. And probably the deer I saw that morning.
Probably.
Right? Just a massive velvet.
4x4.
Yeah, mid 160s probably.
At least.
I mean, just a freaking toad.
Yep.
And he comes in and he just immediately started just pushing deer around. Like we just watched him just bullying every deer around him, including the deer you were putting the stock on.
Yep.
And so it's like, they're all, at this point, the cool thing is that they have moved to public. They are on public.
Literally a little sliver. I mean, there's public, 80, private, and there's like a thin sliver.
80 acres. That's what it is, 80 acres. Yeah. Which in this country is nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah, it's in 80
It's like
acres
a drainage,
slim.
like a cut.
Yeah. That's what it is. It's literally part of a drainage, part of a drainage.
So we ran out, we crossed the fence. There's a ridge in front of them, maybe 100 yards away from them.
Yeah.
And so we just kind of crossed the fence and snuck out to it. And by the time I had crawled up to the top, I think those deer were boogered enough by those doe that ran down there that they're just like, eh.
I don't think they ever saw you guys.
Yeah, I don't think so.
What happened is when in Strauss and I ended up finding the bed of probably where that big one was when we got down in there the next day. I think that he was antsy enough with those does moving and those other bucks that he was like, I'm heading to Montana. I'm jumping this fence and I'm hitting that drainage, probably right where he came from.
I'm leaving the state, ladies. Who's coming with?
And so they were like on the fence line, and I'm like, oh my God, like this is it. And I didn't realize, like, we saw you guys, and like you still were real far from them.
Yeah, there's no way we're getting a shot on those deer. That's what I said. It was a piece of shit stock on a piece of shit deer.
And it was
that ended up being an awesome buck. I mean,
oh yeah, that was a giant.
But it was far fetched and.
Yeah, and so I mean, so what did we do? We end up leaving.
We backed out. Yeah, we went back to the high point. Went back. So you were up at that point, and because we were still hunting together at that point.
It finally started kind of. So it was only supposed to rain for like an hour.
It was off and on.
And then
the whole day.
Basically off and on the whole day.
Yeah. So we circled back out and around and started walking the drainage.
Yep.
This seems to be how it goes out here. It's like, oh, there's some right there. And we laid right down. The trick out here is seeing them before they see you, and it's tough to do.
Well, and that day was especially tough because it was cloudy and rainy, so they didn't have to lay in the shade. They could lay wherever the hell they wanted.
Yeah. So we were just walking that drainage. It may have been the same drainage you thought that those 4 bucks went into in the morning.
That's exactly what it was, yeah.
And I saw some bucks, and we hit the dirt. Colton's waving his yellow flag around. I'm sure that's what they saw.
He's throwing the caution flag.
Yeah. And we saw, I don't know if we saw, yeah, we could probably see them all. There was 2 2-year-olds, and there was like, there's like a decent looking buck there.
It was weird because he looked like a whitetail.
Yeah, we couldn't tell, and it ended up being a buck that we chased. He
was big.
We've put 3 or 4 stocks on him
since. We think he's at least 4 or 5, probably.
I'd say, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just a heavy. Is he a 3x?
No, he's a 2x3.
2x3.
Not counting I think he has little brow tines.
Yeah, but heavy.
Heavy. Yeah, heavy, nice frame.
Yeah, because we looked at him and we were screwed at that point. They had already seen us, so it was like, cool. I could stalk that deer, but
yeah, we were very much still just figuring it out. We're just like, dude, I guess there's deer here. Like, can we stalk them here? How's this work?
So weird, man. So yeah, that blew. We ended up going. We eventually got out of there, right? Because it was raining and we were cold.
Long walk. We walked all those drainages. And
Never end up seeing those 4 bucks. Came back to the truck, left.
That may have been the day, or that was the morning, huh?
Yeah, and then I think we just drove around that night.
Drove around that evening.
Yeah, because we're at this point we're just scattered. We're like, we don't know what the hell.
We're like, okay, apparently there's some mule deer up there.
So we left, and then that was opening day. That was Friday.
Yeah.
Yep. And then Saturday, we end up going.
Here, I think we can kind of cover, for the sake of listeners, like the next 2-3 days.
Yeah. We ended up going back to the same area.
Yeah. We did some driving around. We did check some ag to the east. You know, we bounced around, tried a few different areas just to figure out what these deer are doing.
We didn't see anything.
We didn't find anything. And so we ended up coming back to this spot.
We didn't see bucks.
And we're like, man, we didn't see anything. So we're like, the spot here seems to be where the bucks are at. And that held true because we started 100%. Seeing a bunch of them. And so over the course of the next 2-3 days, so we've been hunting here for 5 days. Mm-hmm. So over the course of the next 2-3 days, I kept going on the south side of the road.
Yep,
and
south.
You were hitting the north. Kind of bouncing around. Yep. And like, dude, Bachman and I were getting into bucks. Like,
that's where
we're not going that far from the road. We walked maybe a half mile. I say not that far. Half mile off the road, and there they are. You know, and the morning really seemed to be the key, because they're still coming back in the morning.
The trick is definitely being able to find them in the morning. That's been our big
because dude,
thing.
we did here. I want to try to like verbalize this. I might struggle with, but like the strategy that we really figured out was working is like in the morning, if you can get in there just before light or as it's breaking light, get to a point
You're
where
gonna get eyes on a buck.
Yep, where you can see some of these like bedding areas where that buckbrush is at, where these brushy hillsides are at. From far away, you know, several hundred yards, you got to have good glass out here. The trick to killing these mule deer, and I say this having not killed a mule deer this week, so take it for what it's worth, but to locating them anyways, is to get in there in the morning, see where they're coming back to, and then get to a point where you can watch them. And either they're going to bed down in that area where you're seeing them, or you have to chase them. And we had a lot of really good encounters doing that. I think 3 days in a row, at least 2, maybe I think 3 days in a row. We went out there in the morning, glassed bucks walking in, rarely made it to the point that we were going to, and then set right up on them. Once or twice they bedded in the spot that we saw them initially. And I think the other one or two times we ended up following them for like several miles.
Yeah.
And so you just have to, it's just point to point, keeping ground between you guys, or between you and the deer essentially. And if you can see that deer bed down, like that's the ticket. Because once they're bedded down, if you haven't seen them do that, it's
almost impossible.
It's almost impossible to find them after the fact.
I mean, and again, this is we're learning on the fly last year. This year, we're having to learn on the fly all over again. It's a whole different situation how we're spotting these deer. The thing that Strauss and I were running into as we were going on that north side is we essentially it's almost 1.5 miles of grasslands, just rolling grasslands before you get to those drainages. Every morning we were running into those deer, but there's enough terrain there that like you pop up over and you're like, there they are, you know, and either you see them, they see you. Like we end up seeing the buck the next day that you stalked, the 3x2 or whatever, 4-year-old. And like we bumped him into Montana and he's now coming from 3 miles away. That was the other thing that just blew my mind is like, I'm used to seeing these deer, and like we would see these deer on the hillside. They're 700, 800 yards, and they would go into the wheat field, and then they would go back. These deer are literally moving 3-4 miles each way a night. And
it's nothing.
I still don't know if you and I could put a finger on why. Why they're moving from clear down there up to the road and then back. Water? Probably not.
It's probably just how they survive, man. Just moving.
It's, I think this, and I think in a normal year when there's not a drought, probably not. But like, they're moving 3 to 4 miles. You know, we're seeing we bump those deer into Montana. Next thing you know, they're by the road, which is 3 miles away and coming back. So they moved at least 3 miles each way that night.
Yeah.
So
over the course of those 2-3 days, I mean, we were settling into like, all right, we're having encounters
we're seeing
with bucks.
bucks. We're seeing shooters.
I think the thought of like exploring new areas was fading, and we're like, okay, like we're in our spot.
And
like,
keep in mind, in this time too, and again, this isn't, I know people light us up for this sometimes. We're not knocking people that just want to go out and kill a buck and shoot a 1 or 2 year old. Like, dude, knock yourself out. I still think it would have been a freaking challenge in that area.
I mean, dude, the entire week, I don't know if we came across a buck over 2 years old that was bedded in like an approachable spot.
Yeah, I mean, the only deer
every single time.
We weren't putting stalks on 2 year olds. We weren't trying to kill 2 year olds.
Yeah.
We were trying to look at 3 and older.
In most cases, 3-year-olds were bedded with 4-year-olds. It seemed.
Yep.
And so we I think we probably both of us had several stocks that we were like, okay, I'm going after that 4-year-old, but dude, if that big 4x4 stood up, that 3-year-old, like I'd be hard pressed not to shoot him.
100%.
And the harder that those stocks got, I think
this morning I called you and I said I have a real hard time holding off on this 2-year-old that just bedded in this ditch.
Yeah.
And we didn't go after him, and we ended up seeing a shooter right there. But like, yeah, man. And again, it's not a knock to those people. Like, if we actively tried to kill a 2-year-old this week, we may be sitting in the same situation. Yeah. That's how hard it was this week.
Yeah. It was just impossible stalking situations, man. I mean, dude, I've been in like in the gym, freaking training for this hunt for months, like the entire year. And I'm like mental preparation, like I'm ready. And I mean, we put some killer stalks on these deer, and like it just seems like when you decide to go to make an approach, somehow they just decide to go the other way.
Yep.
I think at least a half a dozen times, if not a dozen times, we committed to a direction. I was like, dude, they can either go right or left. I went left, they went right. And there's no way, they don't see you, they don't smell you, they just have this intuition.
This brushy area and stuff, there's so many drainages, like, it's just, like, if you don't see even if you see them bedding and you're making the stalk, you're looking at stuff and you're like, was it that cedar or that cedar or this cedar?
Yeah. Well, dude, how many times were you sure you're within 50 yards and I'm going to peek up over this rise?
100%.
And I'm like, where are they?
I'm locked on.
And then you look up and a mile that way, you're like, there they are. They're crossing the road right there.
The best stalk that Strauss and I had was yesterday. So yesterday
was the day.
We were in the deer. We hunted from morning till 4 p.m. straight, which people might be like, oh, you didn't hunt. It was 92 degrees. It's freaking hot. And I mean, we put
on 10 miles yesterday.
Yeah. And so in the morning...
Dude, last night, I didn't stop running. Last night we went out, I went to the glassing point, and before I sat down on it, I was like, there they are. They're going that way. We wind bumped them. And then in our bare feet, in our socks, we ran like 3/4 of a mile. Colt was like...
Still pulling cactus out of his toes.
Yeah, I was like, we have to go now.
Quit, bro. Quit whining. We can pick him out later.
He's like, if I step on the cactus, he's like, it's going to slow us down. I was like, unacceptable. We have to run.
Well, dude, yesterday morning when we went out, this is just to put a frame around like how these deer were in this area. And again, we found them, man. Give us credit. Like, we covered, I'm talking hundreds of miles of driving to try to find deer. We found where the deer were.
What day did we get a flat tire?
Yesterday, no, 2
days ago. Yeah.
Sunday.
That could have been a trip ender.
Yeah, it was Sunday. So Labor Day was when we were
Sunday of Labor Day weekend.
Sunday, we pull into the spot. We're all on cloud 9 because we're like, hey, this is probably where the deer are. And we literally pull off the road. We turn the truck off, and we hear... And I've got brand new Nittos on. Like, these things are tough as shit. And we take a freaking Velociraptor claw right up through the damn tire. It
was serious.
And I mean, there was no stopping it. We were flat.
Rear driver's side.
And you're in the middle of nowhere. We're off in a ditch now, parked. You're on gravel road.
At the spot, at least.
Yeah, so we hunted.
I was like, so are we gonna hunt? Or
I was so
do you want to deal with this?
Morning.
Yeah, I do.
I was ready to like just, if Strauss said the wrong word, I was gonna bury him in a ditch.
Yeah.
I was like, here's a snack bar.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, nothing you can do. These roads are really rough. In fact, we had a low tire last time we were out here. as well. It just beats the shit out of them on the cattle grates and stuff.
It's
and
tough roads for sure. It's all dirt roads.
Yeah, it took forever to get the damn tire changed. And luckily...
Well, so we hunted that morning. It must have been a few mornings ago, because I think that's the first morning we got on that 3x3.
That's the morning that we went up to the high point on your side. So we were both on the south side at this point. We were at the high point because we saw that buck the night before at the high point. He bedded down right there. Mm-hmm. So we went to the high point. You guys went to your point. You guys saw deer and started stalking them. I don't think we saw shit where we were.
Yep.
And then we were like,
yeah,
hey,
we got kind of close.
We had to get those tires fixed.
Well, dude, this is what I'm talking about. That morning that we stalked that 3x3, he's a nice buck. I mean, he's all over 140 with no 2s.
Yeah.
No 3s, I'm sorry. And I left Bachman in that spot because it was only maybe 200 yards from where those deer were at. He had a good vantage point. I gave him my binos. He was filming from there. I went out and around and tried to come up over him. And I don't know what happened. I guess that 2-year-old smelled me or saw me or something. And they boogered. But I went and I found that buck's bed. And it's like there's just absolutely no way that you could get into him. It's like there's 6 foot of... whatever kind of, thick brush that is on either side that was just protecting him from.
Yeah, and I think that
everything.
I think the thing, so that morning, we did get the tire fixed, but that was just a stressful fucking day. That was just...
Yeah, we got it, dude, we got it done. So this is the benefit of knowing landowners and calling people. So I called a landowner that owns a bunch of ground around here. And just said, hey, Mike, you might remember me, bow hunter from Pennsylvania. I said, we got a flat out here. We're trying to figure out, who could fix this thing for us. And he's like, oh, yeah. He's like, yeah, you might want to call so-and-so. And he also offered us a truck or a tire off of one of his trucks and stuff. And fortunately, one of those tire shops, they had like an emergency service. And he came out and patched our tire on a Sunday, and we were back in business.
Yeah, and I mean, we had to drive to Bowman, which was fine. We put spare on, or Baker, sorry.
Baker, Montana.
And that was a relief because I didn't know. I thought we were gonna be hunting the ditch the rest of the time.
Thought that might have been it.
We were,
because you can't go up in the Badlands without a spare.
No, you'd be in bad shape. So we got it patched. It held. Put the spare back in, and then Monday, Labor Day, was the day. That was the day we got them in. And so let me set this stage because this was, and I still don't understand how we process this. So you guys go south, we go north again, right? Strauss and I get down in there, we pop over a ridge, and we look, and there's, I think, 8 bucks together, Strauss, in that group? 8 bucks together, including 2, maybe 3 shooters in the group, like right below us, and they see us, so we bump them, and then it's the run game, knob to knob to knob to try to get eyes on them. At the same time, you tell me how many bucks came across the road?
6.
So there were 14 bucks in that area that Strauss and I went into. 6 came to you, 8 went the other way, and then we end up picking up another group of, what was the group we saw? 5? Another group of 5. So you're talking about almost 20 bucks at least just in that little area, and 5 shooters probably in the group.
Yeah.
And that, so we bump that 8, and I see that 3x2 does the same thing, goes right back down towards the Montana line. We end up putting up a couple drainage hunts because I thought like they might be there. Finally, we get eyes on a real nice shooter. Actually, probably 2 bucks. One's just a 3x3. The other one's a real nice 4x3. And we watch those deer. They get some does, and they pick up and they go up over the ridge. So we're running, and they're in verns, right? So we're running on the fence line. We get to this top. We see 4 or 5 does go this way, and then we see the 5 bucks come up. And I told Colton, I said, "Hey man, we're about to get in the game. As soon as they jump this fence, they're on public. Here's the drainage. It's 8:30 probably. I was like, they're gonna bed right in this drainage on public, and we are in the game finally. Damned if they don't jump up, go right down in the drainage, and this is just crazy, right? At this point, we've watched them for a mile and a half probably, So we go in, we get everything on, we go for the stalk, right? And we get up on a high point. I see the deer down in the bottom, and they're just feeding, right? They're not bedding, they're just feeding. I said, hey, they're gonna lay down here somewhere. It looks like this little buck may have laid down. We get back out and around, we come down in the ditch, and it's just like you said, like we pop up over, and I'm gonna just drill them at 40 yards. Not there. 10 more yards. Not there. 10 more yards. Not there. where the hell did they go? I was like, they have to be around this ditch. We get up to this next high point. Now we're almost 2 miles in. And it's same thing. We're like, I know where the shade is, right? And it's hot. I'm like, they're going to bed right here. Not there. Look, 3/4 of a mile, there they are standing down in the Badlands. It's just like, are you kidding me? Like, we watch them for another probably half mile, and eventually they dive up into, and this is the bad part, now we're in the Badlands, but we're out of position. We're 3/4 of a mile away, and so it looks like they just went into this cut bank and bedded down. And we marked it. We had some trees in this bottom to mark, but like, when you finally get there, oh, there's a cut bank, there's a cut bank, here's a cut bank, here's a cut bank. So you're in the area, but it's like, I don't know. So, right, we take boots off, we get our stock, and there's this perfect cut bank, which is where I thought they were. And I mean, we're on it, dude. And we get up over, nothing. Go a little further, nothing. Okay, they're in this next ditch. Nothing. It's like, what the fuck? Like, we saw them cut this tree. Like, they were right here. And next thing, Strauss was like, hey, right here, right here. And one buck cuts out, which was not one of the shooters. And then I looked to my right, and that buck stands up, and it's 80 yards. And it was windy as hell, and I just wasn't shooting them. And it was too late. We already blew it. You know, and hindsight, we had walked by them at 35. We walked a trail. Like, we're like, hey, we're going to cut out and around, and we'll set our stuff here, and then this is how we'll come in right back into the wind. It'll be perfect. In hindsight, they were bedded here. We walked right by them at 35 yards. We never saw them. They were down in this ditch.
Our gear was 35 yards from them.
What's that?
Our gear was 35 yards from them.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
35 yards.
Never saw them in the ditch. I mean, and it wasn't, like, the way it went, it literally was probably about this thick of a top, and they were just in the cut bank right underneath. You saw 3 beds right there. Had we, like, maybe really tried to ease up, we could have saw antler tips and probably figured something out. But, like, that was 50 yards from where I thought they went into.
Stalkers are tough, man. That
was the best stock we had, for sure.
So this was yesterday, you're talking?
Yesterday morning.
So, same time, we're across the road, and we're set up on this knob that we figured out is probably one of the best to watch these, like, brushy ditches. And we're sitting there for, like, I don't know, 45 minutes to an hour, and I knew we were going to see bucks because we just were in them. And before too long, I, like, look over to the right towards the road. Sure enough, here's racks coming over the hill, like 200 yards from us. I was like, dude, right here. And they could have gone one of two ways, and like I said, of course.
And that's behind you. Like, road's here, you're here, and they're coming.
Yeah, like right here.
We must have bumped them.
I think so, probably. Or they're coming back from that water hole or something. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, they came right behind us, downwind. Our wind was really good for watching these drainages, and they came right behind us. Bumped them, just the wind, they didn't see us. And so we decided to chase them because there was one in there that I would have shot. And we ended up following those deer for at least a mile and a half, probably. Just we'd get up to the next rise, we'd watch them for a bit, they'd crest, we'd dip. They'd crest, we'd dip. And they intercepted a few different groups, like, kind of along the way. And, you know, there was a couple of young bucks sparring and stuff. So eventually we got out to that high point. Mm-hmm. And there was 9 bucks all together. 6 of the ones with the shooters in them crested that high point, mm-hmm. which is 3,000 feet, and down over. And there's 3 younger ones that hung behind for a half an hour and held us up. And
you got some cool footage. Got some cool footage.
They were sparring and stuff. It was cool, but, you know, we lost those deer because of it. Eventually, we did get up there, and
you saw them bed, right?
No, we didn't see them bed. We got up to the top and lost them. I had to drop a deuce, so I backed down off the high point. Bachman calls me, and he's like, "Dude, those bucks saw you. They just ran from, like, over here," and I still assume that was the same bucks that we saw. I don't know for sure. But
that high point is extremely fertilized at this point.
There's a lot of dumps around it.
It'll be like one of the only places that is like green.
Yeah, that'd be number 1 tip for mule deer hunting in North Dakota is bring TP, wet wipes, or dude wipes. Whatever you want. Sun away wipes. And so anyways, Yeah, I mean, now that we're talking through it, I suppose they all kind of sound the same. But, I mean, we saw...
It does sound the same, but it
same
literally
story
was.
over and over again. And we I think we put on a lot of good stalks. We saw a lot of good bucks, a lot of the same bucks, enough to where we're starting to, like, we know who they are. Mm-hmm. And, man, I thought... So last one I'll kind of speak on here was last night. So we did walk out to that high point, just because we could see a lot of country from there. And before I even sat down, I looked over the hill, and there's that really nice 3x3 that we had seen a few days prior. And our wind was going right at him. And he was with the same 4x3, I think it was 3-year-old 4x4 that he was with. And I could see him getting antsy. Colton, sure enough, is 300 yards behind me, dropping a deuce.
And
I was like, dude, we gotta go. And so as soon as
you can't rush that stuff. It's a medical fact.
Yeah. I was like, we gotta go, dude. And so they made it down into this next drainage, and I went left, they went right. We saw them up the drainage cut a ways. We already had shed where our shoes were off. And so we ran all the way up and around, and I thought for sure we were going to kill them. I thought we were coming right down on them. I was like, here they are. It's a little pinch point in this drainage. Just not there.
Not there.
They just weren't
They're
there.
a ghost, man. I mean, I don't know. At the end of the day, we've put on a ton of miles. I literally can say that I probably have never hunted as hard as I've hunted in the last 5 days here in North Dakota, at least. South Dakota to a point, but like North Dakota especially. And on top of that, to not have a shot opportunity on a shooter. We saw plenty of shooters. Like, don't get us wrong, guys. Like, what we're saying is, like, it took a while. We were in them. We found a ton of shooters in it, and I know, like, I was talking to my dad. He's like, man, it seems like you guys were in them. I can't believe you didn't get a shot off. Like, seeing them's not the hard part. Getting close with a bow is the hard part.
Just borderline unstockable country.
It's brushy. It's just so many different ditches.
They're just smart too, and it's cool to be able to like see them, like, mm-hmm. and you can when you see where they bed, you're like,
I get it.
There's no way. There's no way to get in there. Like, they're covered from their back. Their wind is always at their back. Shade is always on them. They can always see the only approach to them.
It's so wild. I mean, even this morning, like, again, same story. Like, today probably was the worst day that we've had in terms of seeing deer. We just saw some small 2-year-olds.
Well, so after last night, Bachman and I decided to just commit, which probably, I don't know if that ever works.
You put a whitetail strategy in,
for
right?
muleys, yeah. So we just went and sat on this little pinch point that those bucks last night walked through, and yeah, we didn't see anything this morning. So a couple of small bucks.
We saw some small bucks and some does, and then Strauss and I made a run down the drainage because then we were gonna wind bump up to you guys, and we were sitting on this high point for quite a while. Watched this 2-year-old hit a ditch, which is when I texted Bachman, and I was like, man, I'm having a real tough time holding off on this deer right now. And I was like, I've seen that deer 6 times probably. I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna shoot him. And, like, we were glassing and talking, and then I said, hey, man, right here. And a big 4x3 in velvet stands up. There was a single cedar, which we glassed the entire way down the ditch. This is just how smart these deer are to sit with the wind and the shadows. Like, we never saw that deer. It was a single cedar 75 yards from us, and all of a sudden just stands up and walks off. Never looks back at us. He never caught our wind. Wind was coming perfect. Never saw us. Just, like, literally, it sounds stupid, like, he just felt something was wrong and just worked his way up, and ghost, never saw him again. And that was it. Like, we worked that whole drainage up. We saw a few does, but, like, today we didn't see anything. And
dude, check out here. Here's some of these bucks that are in here.
So we found that one. That's probably a 2-year-old. That was back where we made the stalk on Labor Day morning.
We might be a year off
buck.
on all these, but I think that's probably 2.
If this is a 2-year-old, he's a tank. Could be a 3-year-old.
Stud, really nice genetics. I think that's probably a 3-year-old buck
and we're saying
that you found.
We're saying that based on mass mainly, mass of the antler.
This was from 2 years ago, so that'd be a 4-year-old this year. This would be a 4-year-old this year.
Yep.
And this would be, I don't know what that is, 4+.
Yeah, it's a 4+. Could be one of those big whitetail looking bucks that we're looking at.
Maybe.
Strausser found that, eyeballed that one. That was
Strauss llama.
Strauss llama. That was the best chance I had at a deer when we kind of formed a strategy where you and Bachman were up the ditch, I was in the middle, and Strauss was going to pick up his shed, and we had seen 4 bucks run into this gap, and I came up over this edge, and sure enough, 37 yards, there he is, like angled away, and that's the only time in North Dakota I came in full draw.
What buck was that?
I didn't know. That's why I came into full draw because I thought there was one shooter in there. But then I never could see what the buck was, so I had to let down. And then eventually 3 of them blew by us. I still don't know where the 4th went, which I think was the shooter.
That was the 3 that ran out past me. I was at the end of the
drainage.
drainage.
But there was a 4th, which was the shooter that we had seen. Where'd he go? And then I got excited because I was on that deer. I let off, and as soon as I let off, I saw a deer stand up behind this cedar in front of me. And I went back on full draw on that, and steps out, and it's just like this little fawn, like looking up at me, like, don't knock the spots off of me. But yeah, there was 4 bucks in there, and 3 ran by me, 3 ran by you. Where did he go? And that was the shooter in the group. Because you said the 3 that ran by you probably weren't shooters.
I don't think they were.
Where'd he go?
Yeah, it's been a tough week. For sure. I think we hunted real hard. I mean, there was a lot of, because we're hunting 35, 40 minutes from here. Mm-hmm. We'd come back. We cooked every night.
We came back at 9:30, 9:45 every night.
We were in bed by 10:30, 11, up at 4:15. Hunt all day, 10 plus miles per day. Seeing bucks.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
They whooped us,
It's been tough. Well, dude, and we started that with a 26-hour journey to South Dakota.
And we've got a 26-hour journey
night.
Back tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've just, can I say I'm excited for whitetails? Like, that's, if anything, it's made me very
Dude, it makes me feel like a bitch. Like as far when I'm like, oh man, that stands like 500 yards in there. Like how am I gonna do this? Yeah,
I'm excited to get into whitetails. We gotta buy Bachman new boots because his freaking soles fell off.
Yeah, Bachman had all kind of problems on this trip here. We won't go into details here.
The camp stories stay with the camp. Oh shit! It's I mean, here's the thing. Like I was talking to Emily yesterday, and she's like, "Well." She's like, what are you guys going to do? Like, because, you know, we've talked about it. Like, part of our goal here is to produce monthly short feature films, right? So September is a feature film. And we thought that the majority of our content, and it still might, would be from this trip. Mm-hmm. And it's like, you know, no knock to some of the other shows and guys that are out there. But listen, we hunted our asses off. This is reality. Like, we busted our ass. We didn't kill a deer. Mm-hmm. Like, we had opportunities in South Dakota, which was awesome for one day. Like, that's mind-blowing. We hunted our asses off for 5 days here, and we just didn't fill tag. And there's a lot of guys that I think don't fill tags.
Frankly, I think we were seeing a lot more deer than a lot of guys out here.
100%.
We talked to several guys just parked on the roadside. And we're like, oh, what are you seeing? And like,
none.
Sound like maybe a couple 2-year-olds a day, some does.
Yeah,
and
we're
like,
15, 20
we're
bucks
like, well,
a
yeah,
day.
we're seeing all kind of deer. Like,
we just can't get on them. So, yeah, I mean, I think that I'll be interested to see how people react to it because you'll see the type of terrain and the situations that we were in, and they were really difficult, you know, and I think we made the best of them. We tried.
Dude, it was fun.
Dude, Strauss and I yesterday had two 2-year-olds running right up a ditch to this water hole, which at one point I thought one was a 3-year-old and I was going to kill it. Then I was kind of like, I'll just kill a 2-year-old and I don't care. And dude, we're sitting right next to the water hole, and like, these are where these deer are coming at, right up this ditch, 30 yards. And he's like, there are 2 are left. And you look, and it's like flashbacks to South Dakota, and they're walking right down the trail at us. And it's like, dude, you can't catch a break out here.
Yeah. So. It was fun. Once we did find deer, and we started feeling confident in the area, and we started putting stalks on, it was a blast. It was just really tough, and it never came together.
Yeah. Well, that's South Dakota and North Dakota for us. We'll be heading back east.
We had a last minute win here, just like an hour ago.
So yeah, we're staying. Landowner let us stay here, and like all of a sudden, lady just drives up and starts talking. Who was she talking to? Strauss?
What a cool last minute win with
Yeah.
her pulling it. She's go, oh, this and that and this. I heard her from inside here. I was like, what is going on out there?
Yeah, we thought it was the landowner's wife, but no, she's they're cattle farmers.
Yeah.
And yeah, all of a sudden she's like, oh, I wish we would have known you.
She
were
goes,
up
you're
here."
Sid's hunters, eh?
Yeah, we've got 1,000 acres leased here and 500 acres. And in North Dakota, if you lease the ground for crops or cattle, the hunting rights come with it. And it's like, oh, okay. And
Or I think it's just kind of unspoken. I think that's like how it goes.
well, and she's like, I haven't seen too many. I've seen a bunch of does here, but I haven't seen too many. She asked if we were hunting does or bucks for a bucks. She's like, oh, but I saw two real big ones like right up here. And she said that this drainage that she has down here sounds pretty damn good.
Yep.
And again, it's little wins, but things like that could set up a future year where it's like, oh, cool, like they get rain, and she's like, yeah, we've got 15, a bachelor group of 15 muleys in this drainage every day.
Yeah. Oh, it's just cool. I mean, that's
Or buy
half,
some beef off her tonight.
yeah, that's half the fun. That's half the fun. It's just like establishing ourselves in an area is like,
We've done it in Kansas.
yeah,
man.
you just
People know.
meet people and like you just be honest about your intentions and like people don't mind hunters, especially her. She's like, oh, growing up, we always used to have hunters out and we had a
that's
good
so
time with
crazy.
them and
But she appreciated. She's like, oh, you guys are the ones who'd be walking all the ditches and do like, and again, no knock to gun hunters because I'm a gun hunter too, but like. Sometimes that's where the bad rap gets, right? When you approach people as a bow hunter.
we had a lady and her husband pull up in like a minivan, like out in the the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
She had like a visor on. It was the weirdest thing. She goes,
we had no water. I'm like, do you have water in this vehicle?
yeah, she's like, oh, she's like, you guys are the real hunters. You're doing the real thing.
We
out
look
here.
like shit, probably.
Yeah, you're like, well, we can't kill anything, so.
Yeah, do you have water in this vehicle? Get out. I was like, oh, then it was like, oh, do you live like up here? Because if you have private land, I'd be curious.
Yeah.
No, we're just taking the long way around Scenic Drive.
Yeah.
Like, get out of here.
Who knows, man, how much land Hope actually owns.
Through owns and lease.
Or leases, yeah. It could be.
She gave us a good referral to another guy, too, we're going to check out here. And
that's how you do it, man. You get referrals, you be nice to people.
Super fluke year. And frankly, just for the economy and for these people, man, I hope they get some rain. Because you could just tell the struggle down here. I mean, it's a small town and small economy as it is. The whole area depends on cattle, and growing, hay and stuff like that. And, like, there's nothing. It's like a standstill. And then after COVID, like, I don't know how these guys survive. Mm-hmm. I don't. So yeah, we're gonna go buy some beef off of Hope and good connections and like why not like buy local beef, and she's kind of says somebody like bailed on her basically and can't pay for it, so we'll get a good rate on it. And but man, fun trip as always. I'm glad we had a good deer camp. I'm glad that we put Strauss and Bachman through like the hardest hunt of the year out of the gate to test their wits.
It's all downhill from here, boys.
Yeah, it's all downhill
in terms of difficulty. Hopefully uphill in terms of success.
Yeah, we can take naps in the tree stand as long as you got your muddy harness on all day long. You know, and yeah, it's been it truly is like not bullshit. Like it was probably the hardest hunt I've ever been on. In terms of how much effort we put in and just didn't close the deal. And that's fine that we didn't close the deal. I feel like we left it out on the table.
Yeah, I feel good about our effort. It was a fun hunt. We didn't kill anything, but we had a lot of good stalks. And like, dude, I'm just impressed with these deer. Like, I'm just honestly blown away.
A lot of respect to them, that's for sure.
Absolutely. I'm humbled, because we crushed it last year. It was easy. We came in and just killed two in 2 days. And granted our standards were maybe a little higher this year, but I don't know if we could have done what we did last year.
Yeah, I don't think, I would have had a tough time killing a 2-year-old this year if I put a stalk on it.
So.
Yeah, just it. So looking forward to not necessarily the drive, but getting back east and getting back to our plots and cameras. And
my rye came in the mail today and my box blind's getting ready to get it delivered.
Perfect, man. Yeah, I'm going to try to get down to Kentucky here in the next couple weeks and get some Ryan. The stuff that I planted last week with Bachman and then even in the weekend is like, looks phenomenal. Mm-hmm. We've gotten a ton of rain back home too, which has helped. But yeah, I mean, it's that time of year to get back into the whitetail game. So Kentucky's open. So I have that. Yeah, I have that available. Like and I'm kind of behind the game just because I haven't been able to get down there with travel. But Kentucky's open. Ohio opens in 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
And then Pennsylvania in a month.
Yep.
A little less than a month. And so, yeah, we'll just get tuned back in for that and be ready here to try to close out September strong, and back to the east and green, hopefully.
Yeah, probably some real life stuff here in the next 2 weeks. Get some caught back up on work and plug back in, and then get ready for the opener, like you said.
Ready to go, man. Well, we appreciate everybody listening to this road trip HUNTR podcast here from North Dakota. Couldn't close the deal for you. We are bringing back some antlers and some meat, though.
That's right. Yeah, beef meat.
Beef and sheds. So, yeah, it's been a good trip, and man, I look forward to this trip every year. It's long, it's hard, but
Oh, one more thing.
Yeah?
We're heading south tomorrow to hook up with a South Dakota landowner.
We are.
Quite a few. I mean,
20,000.
Yeah, like 20,000 acres. That sounds like they've got some hunters on and stuff, but the guy just wants to, I think, meet us, vet us, and that could be a sure thing for some years to come. So
Yeah,
we've got kind of one last thing to try here before we hit the road, and
yep. Then drop the camper off in Rapid City, South Dakota.
yeah, hopefully I don't think we stole it, because I was supposed to check it in like a few days ago, but
No, they'll be fine.
they haven't called me, so
Yeah,
I
they'll be fine.
think we're fine.
And then head east
Head east.
for 20 plus hours, 24 hours. Cool. Well, we will catch you all next week on the HUNTR Podcast.
Later.
Take me